Hello, everybody. Welcome. It is episode 6 of Citizen Central. We've been going now for about 6 months, and this is going to be actually the first show of the new year. So we're filming this beforehand, but hello, 2023. Good to see you. Welcome, everybody. We're here live with a couple of other creators to talk about some Star Citizen stuff. Today, we're talking about what the future holds, near term, kind of 318, 319 stuff, midterm next year, and in the distant future. Luckily, we just had a release of the letter from the chairman for the end of 2022, so that's going to be a nice topic of conversation, but we got a lot to talk about today. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. Some great names here. I'm going to let you all go ahead and tell everyone where you come from, what you do, what your content is. So please go ahead. We'll start with you, Leadnap. Could you let everybody know what you do, Star Citizen related?
I can't
Sorry.
hear it.
Yeah, I'm not hearing you, Leadnap. I think you might be muted. Tell you what, we'll give you a second to work on that. Ollie, you go ahead, and we'll circle back around to you, Led.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, Star Citizen. It's great. PTU. Let's go.
Woo!
Yeah. Yeah.
So what do you do? You usually making gameplay videos?
So
right?
yeah, sorry, I'm just enjoying the podcast.
No
So I
problem.
make Star Citizen content. I've been doing it for like 7 months now, which is crazy because I feel like I only just started. But yeah, I've been posting. Well, it was more daily, but less so now. But it's just gameplay. It was all about discovering Star Citizen and learning what the game was and checking out the project after my original pledge back in 2015. And I've just been on the road of just seeing what the game is up to these days and just seeing what it's all about. Now I'm just invested.
Yeah, we had a couple of different episodes, like one when you first kind of started getting into it, and another one about 6 months in, and you were pretty enthusiastic about it throughout the whole year. How's it been going for you since then?
You know what? If you'd asked me a month ago, maybe honeymoon period had kind of, I wouldn't say tapered off, but I would say I see the project for where it is.
Mm-hmm.
But since PTU, loving it. It's awesome. Like the new tech coming online in the PTU is awesome, and I'm very excited about the future.
Yeah, getting that new patch kind of refreshed things a little bit, I think, for a lot of people.
Majorly.
Leadnap, did you get it figured out on your end?
All right, I think we're good.
Yes,
Hopefully
yes,
you
we
guys
are
can hear
good.
me now.
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right.
Awesome.
So yep, I'm Led from Leadnap Gaming and cover a lot of things for on the Star Citizen side, fleet planning, which kind of ships you want to buy, different features, but also I think most people probably remember me from December saying, take a breath before you buy the Galaxy, think about it for a couple minutes. So that seems to kind of be the niche I'm in these days. So even though I did buy one.
Did you buy the complete set?
I did because
Okay.
because it's like the Bucks, right? If you're gonna LTI it, you want the modules insured too. And I think that's something that's easy to forget about, as you're like, oh well, the ship's insured, but still gotta shell out now for new modules. Better to have it all covered there.
All right. Sorry about that brief little disconnect there. Red Monster, how about you go ahead? Tell us what you do with Star Citizen, where you make content.
Yeah, so I'm RedMonsterSC. My org is the Red Legion, and we're an industrial-focused org that's heavily involved in mining. With the release of 318, I'm excited about salvage gameplay. So I produce YouTube tutorials for both mining and now salvage. And you can find me on Twitch Monday nights, Friday nights, and Sunday mornings for my Sunday morning mining sessions.
Yeah, I am. I don't know about you guys, but I've been loving salvaging. I think people were worried it was going to be kind of like mining. I think it's pretty good. It's differentiated. We'll talk more about it in the podcast, but I imagine you're pretty excited about what you're seeing.
I have had a reclaimer pledge since I want to say around 2017. So it's been a few years. Definitely excited about that one. So.
Yeah, it's nice to see the reclaimer have something to do.
Yes, and be able to fly an atmosphere.
Yeah, that is nice too. That's a solid tweak. I keep forgetting about that one. XeroState, my man, you've been on launch sequence before with me. Thank you so much for coming through last time. Welcome to this one. How you doing?
I'm glad to be here. I'm doing good. So anybody that doesn't know me, I mostly stream. I have a couple of crappy YouTube videos, but I do plan on a little bit more of that in 318. Kind of how-to stuff, get you through some things, that kind of stuff. I deal with a lot of like criminal activity, not so much doing it, but putting those people in prison. I do a lot of bounty hunting, a lot of group stuff when I get a chance to. I'm kind of a gameplay guy, if that makes sense. So try to hop in and get that out there. But
more interested in the game now than kind of what they're talking about it's going to be in the future.
Well, I like the future stuff too. Don't get me wrong, but you got to live in the moment too, right? So, and that interests me a lot. I mean, there's probably 2-3 times a week where I'm like, you couldn't do that in any other game but Star Citizen, and that's right now. And I to steal a quote from Burks. He was Captain Burks. Now he's just Burks. He got demoted.
Yeah. Got kicked out.
But he said the best things that have ever happened to you in Star Citizen haven't happened yet, and it's still pretty epic. Which is pretty cool.
Yeah, that is. It's a good quote. Solid one, Burks. Well done. Put it on a shirt. Well, thank you guys all for joining me today. Before we get into the speculation, though, and we've already kind of dabbled a little bit in this topic, but I'd like to talk a little bit about 318. I want to hear your quick review, kind of what you've been experiencing so far. Is it actually different from the game beforehand? And feel free to bounce off each other on this one. We're here for some conversation, so let me know. Whoever wants to open up.
I will jump in on this one.
Go for it.
If it's okay. Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah, have it.
No.
I think that 318 has by far the most potential of any patch.
We're enthusiastic about the patch,
yes,
clearly.
Very. It's the potential's incredible. You get onto a server that has like 50 people on it. If that's ever happened to you guys, the server FPS is like 17, 18, and like everything is just wild. Everything's working. Almost everything's working. And it's just
explain for people why the server rate being that high is so nice.
So the lower the server FPS, the worse everything performs. So this goes from like inventory to, it's just the slower everything updates on the server side of things. So the higher that is, the better. Lower player counts tend to mean less client connections, tends to be the server FPS goes up. And like NPCs work better, like missions like happen faster. Inventory seems to be much snappier. Like everything just works crazy. And it just gives you that glimpse of like, if they can get this thing working, this patch is going to be incredible. So yeah, that's my immediate take on it.
It's like responsiveness, I think is like the major thing.
Yeah.
It's like the AI and stuff like that. Like when they're switched on and like inventory's instant, it like dramatically changes from I'm playing a project to I'm playing a game.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It feels significantly different when they're responsive and actually dangerous.
They like, I came around a corner the other day and took like 3 shots immediately. It's like, wait a second. You all know how to aim? It was cool too, because it was like I took a few shots, I ducked behind the corner, I healed myself, like I communicated with my team, stuck my head back out, took down a guy, another guy came and filled in a spot, and I was like, wait, hold on, I'm playing Star Citizen. Like I'm playing it. This is a thing. It's very cool.
See, I've had the opposite experience though.
Oh.
I have had just and I'll ask you guys a question first. Have any of you gone to Loreville in the PTU?
Yeah, I woke up there a few times. Yeah,
had some problems
because that's where I've been, and that's where, like, every time you call the elevator, doors open, space, let it close.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
Call it back, elevator shows up. And pre-stream when we were all talking, I was talking about some adventures I had even today, and everything is just taking forever to kind of load in. But once it does, I've had a good experience with it. But it's that load in. I mean, it's been a little rough. But we're still we're early in PTU.
Yeah, I was just gonna say this is like
this
is like the second PTU patch, right? Second or third, and then they went on holiday, so it's kind of like.
So this isn't
even though we've had it for like a week. Yeah.
You maybe just no. You just made me have a thought. Why? Okay, Star Citizen, right? We got ships. They do all this cool technology. Why do we not have automatic elevators that detect you walking up to the door Why have we got to press the button?
Oh, my man, we can't even. They don't even come when you press the
Like-
button yet.
Yeah, maybe they should. Maybe that would fix the issue if they just removed the button.
I kind of want it like the oh gosh, which now the name is going to escape me. Rogue One. Like, why can't it be like the data center in Rogue One, where you're like in the hab and just as you get up, the elevator comes right to you. You just get on it, whips you around to the hangar where you want to go.
It's funny. The elevators and trains have been such a persistent topic from literally from 3.0 until now, for whatever reason, whether they're broken, because they are very oftentimes broken, to just like people, kind of, oh, why do we have all these time wasting things going on in the game? And I wonder if they will ever just be a normal part of the game that we don't think about, or if they'll always be in our face.
I don't think about them much, though.
No?
I thought about them a lot today, where I was having to wait for them to load. But when it works, and it's funny you bring that up, because like I remember reading years ago somebody's review of Star Citizen, and I woke up in bed and they're at Port Olisar, which we all think of as the shortest, fastest, easiest station on Earth, or in the verse, and he's talking about then you walk to your ship, and then you have to board the ship, and then you have to get onto the ship. And for me, that's one of the greatest parts of Star Citizen.
Yeah.
So
Procedure.
I'm always happy about it. But yeah, when it works, I guess I never think about the elevators or the trams. It only comes up when they don't work.
Right. And when the game makes it obvious. I mean, like you said, if you don't like waking up in a city, walking out to your ship and flying through atmosphere every time, the obvious answer is go to sleep in your ship or in a space station. The game just doesn't
I
really.
guess at some point it will be less of an issue, because when you log out, you just log out, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I would just like to be able to set my spawn to a station automatically
instead of having to start at a city.
Like it almost makes more sense to me that you would start at an orbital and not on the planet.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's actually going to be a pretty interesting conversation to have once they start working on the new player experience more, because that will make a difference, a huge impact on how new players are kind of experiencing the game. But overall, when it comes to 318 for you guys, is there... I know actually Leadnap beforehand we were talking about going back and playing some Jumptown. Are you guys kind of over past? I mean, I know this happens with every update. You get over the past patch. Like you don't want to go back to it. But there's so much going on in 318. Does it feel like Star Citizen 317.4 is actually just like a downgrade you don't want to experience anymore? Or are you guys willing to jump back and forth?
Go ahead.
There's definitely gameplay in 318 that you're not going to get. Salvage is a big one. The persistent ships, like you've got soft death now, so I think with what they've added in 318, it does feel like an upgrade to the game. And the fact they've already announced that 318 is going to be a wipe.
Yeah,
we're going back to something that the progress won't matter. So if the progress won't matter, why not just play that in PTU and test out the new features and kind of get yourself immersed in that experience now and the way the game's changed, so that you're better prepared for it on day one when it goes live.
Yeah, I don't mind going back. And this is because for me, the biggest element to the game is the social element. And this is actually why a lot of my close friends that are regular Star Citizen players that play patch after patch and will continue to play don't go into the PTU. So I actually try to limit how much time I spend in the PTU, because I enjoy when the patch drops. That's when most of my friends come alive. And I think what is kind of a change for that is salvage. I don't want to like jump the conversation that way just yet, but 318 is a jump ahead, even though in plenty of ways it also doesn't feel like that. But I think like I've gone back and forth a couple times now, and I don't notice the transition as much. And again, maybe that's just because I haven't had the greatest of experiences in 318 just yet either. So
okay. Yeah, that's what I was wondering. I haven't tried going back to live yet, but there are things that I've experienced in 318 that I'm now like, I don't want to play Star Citizen without this. So I don't know if I'm personally gonna go back.
Yeah. Well, and that's a good thing. You know, it's a good thing for the new update to get you so excited that it's hard to go back.
Yeah.
You know, and I think we've had a long year, an entire year of 317, by the way, where it just kind of felt like, yeah, they're adding some content, you know, and a few little features here and there, but nothing quite like 318's additions, you know. And so I think between the drought of that and then the fact that they're really cool, those two things combined, I think a lot of people are like, once I get into 318, it's like, yeah, it's buggy, yeah, it's frustrating, but I need to experience it, you know.
Yeah.
And but at the same time, I mean, a big part of Star Citizen, like the best moments you have in Star Citizen most of the time are interactions with other players, you know. So there's kind of an element of that too, you know. Even my typical gameplay is I interact with other players a lot, whether it be PvP or not. I hate it when VoIP isn't working, for instance. And and so yeah, I mean, I could see myself going back to 317.4 just for that, you know.
Yeah, we
That's fair.
do our group mining sessions and stuff that are our Sunday experience. You know, not everybody's got Wave 1 access, so we've been going back and forth pretty regularly.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah.
yeah, you definitely miss some of the features.
Yeah, you do. You miss some of the features, but like the point you guys have all made is most players are in the live servers, and that's where most of the gameplay is still taking place. So it's nice to get to try the new features, but it sounds like it's not a journey with no return. Like you guys are still dropping back into the old patch.
So much better though. The patch is
Yes.
so much better than 3.17.4.
Yeah.
Like the thing I love about it most is like the salvage is great. There's so many good features about it, and loading of new locations, which are absolutely awesome. But for me, it's the storytelling left behind. When things are left behind and you can kind of piece together what's happened. Like I'll turn up at a location, there'll be a blown up Ninetales Drake ship just sat there, Cutlass, and there'll be a dead NPC on the ground, and then there'll be like a player dead on the ground, and there'll be a couple of loot boxes, and you just kind of, if you're wandering around, you kind of piece it all together, and it's like, okay, I see what happened here. I see the story.
Yeah.
And I think there's like plenty of videos already just in the PTU of like people discovering things that happened hours prior, and I just think that's awesome.
Yeah,
Well,
that is true.
And to Ollie's point on that, you know, and this is always an interesting thing too when you think about it, like coming into this as a content creator and not just a regular player. I know for me, you know, I've talked to people in the past and said, yeah, you know, and especially based on what XeroState's saying about the whole year we've really been in 317. You know, it's like, yep, when the patch gets dry, we get to what I call the doldrums, where everyone's like, all right, I've done everything in this patch, I'm bored now. As a content creator, you still have to keep creating content, and you kind of stay in that. And what I'm most excited about is, from that content creator seat, really just how much more I get to do in the coming year with going to those various locations and kind of really fleshing out more of the story and more of all the new things they're putting in. Because in PTU, even though it's a long period, it's not long enough of a period that if 318 is going to last most of next year, hopefully it doesn't, but if it does, there's so much more to do now. And for me, that's just one of the biggest things I'm really excited about.
Yeah. I think you made a really good point, Ollie. You see a lot of comments where people are like, yeah, persistent entity streaming is in, but we're not really going to benefit from it. Like you're not going to get into your same shard. You're not going to get the stuff that you left behind. And like to your point,
that sucks.
That's
by the way,
that's half of it. Yeah, it sucks. But
that
like
really sucks.
the fact that every shard still has a history, and you can still find a story like that. You can find a crashed ship with maybe some knocked over cargo, or like a battle where the ship's just like, we've seen it. If you blow up a ship in low orbit, it drops the cargo and everything falls to the surface and somebody can find it. And like, just imagine you're just hanging out with some friends and you come across that. That you can't get that in 317.
It's funny that you talk about the shard stuff, because I just read it today, but I already knew it. That let's say that you log out the next time you log back in, the game does try to put you in that same shard.
Right.
Whether
It
it's
does?
118, 121.
Okay.
Yeah, it does.
If it's full, it'll bounce you. But they said something. It just
It was
got
on the
posted
letter.
today that
Yeah, in the letter.
in the
they're
letter.
talking
Yeah.
about.
Okay. So we'll talk about that later. But
Yeah.
so it does try to get you back into the previous instance. And that actually might. I'm. There's a little suspicion I have that might be the reason for the 25,540 or whatever it is, 24,540 or whatever that error is.
error
Not
code?
error. It's where your entities get stuck.
Oh,
where you're
yeah.
like infinite load.
Mhm.
That it might be that you're loading into a different shard instead of the one that you tried to get into, and it's kind of freaking out while it's doing. I'm not sure, but
Either way, it definitely
20,540,
it feels like they kind of undersold it, I guess. I don't know. It's hard to tell because now they're saying that was the big thing. Everyone is like, oh, there's no matchmaking. You can't get into your same shard. Now they're
Yeah.
like, well, there is. It's just
Yep.
if the server's full. So it's hard to know.
yeah,
like they
it's
got
hard
it
to know
without
if
the
it's hard
guarantee.
to feel it happening. Right?
Yeah.
So,
But there
yeah.
are very clear signs, and I think most of them are like what Ollie said, where you just come across other people who have crashed or fought or something has happened. What
Yeah.
is though? I mean, you already said the persistence, Leadnap, and Ollie, but kind of what is your guys' favorite parts of 318? Moving and we'll take care of this, then we'll move on to the letter and talk about a little bit about 319 coming up.
Ballistic damage.
Really?
I just got triggered
No.
when you said that a little bit.
I know. That's why I said it.
Oh, okay. It's like that's a
picked the
small one, but
controversial one.
okay. Tell me about it.
Yeah, no, I don't know. There's a lot of good stuff with 318, but yeah, I think the ballistic damage is interesting though. I'm just gonna leave it there.
You know about
Let everyone be triggered.
the whole like kind of direction they're moving in with that stuff and with the armor and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't mind them changing things up a little. I think I really didn't want to get into it, but like I think if they just reduce the ammo counts, it would be fine for now. But I mean what they need to do is like have hull strength differences, right? For like bigger ships or tankier ships like the Terrapin, for example.
I honestly have no idea what they should do, and I'm very scared for them. Honestly,
I like the idea that
mission of
it ignores
balancing this game.
shields, but
Yeah,
oh,
no,
that's it.
it's cool. The idea of, I mean, it's kind of a classic sci-fi trope, I think, where energy affects shields and ballistics affect armor. It's just crazy because they talk about, you know, differences in armor between companies and the way that a ballistic might affect the certain place it hits because of a component, like all this stuff. It's kind of like with fuel. You know, they have multiple plans, or they have plans for multiple types of gases that can be refined into fuels. Just a lot.
Yeah. Coming
Well, yeah.
coming from a combat state of point of view, I think it's actually a cool idea. So ballistics, very powerful, kind of low ammo counts, kind of a finishing move, right? That's a great idea. There's nothing wrong with that idea. It's just like a year too early, in my opinion, to change the way that they work right now because we don't have armor. Everything is just a pool of HP.
Right.
And when everything's a pool of HP, your highest alpha, highest burst damage weapon is always going to be the thing that people use. You can load up an arrow right now with all ballistic Gatlings and take out a 600i. You can take out a Corsair without the shields even going down in like 30 seconds, like before you run out of ammo. So it's fun. Like it's fun to do a couple times, but if it happens to you, it sucks.
Oh yeah.
And it just feels like it's cart before the horse, you know? I think it's a great idea eventually when they get all the other like armor mechanics and other things in.
Yeah.
But right now, it's going to be painful to be flying a big ship if the change does make it to live.
Did they explain why they're doing it now?
Yogi said, because we're going to do it eventually. That was his exact. I'm not kidding.
It feels like
No.
an experiment to me. It feels like let's just see how this works. Are people willing to give up the ammo and things like that? Because like when we get to Pyro, we'll come on to that later, hopefully. Like collecting ammo is going to be harder. Like at the moment, if you run out of ammo, it's not a huge deal to go and pick up some more. But if you're out in Pyro and you run out of ammo, arguably that's going to be a lot more of a task to go and like stock up and stuff. But like you say, I think it's too soon. But it's kind of a fun meme right now of just like arrows with ballistics taking out Corsairs in 30 seconds.
You think they need to balance out the time to kill between ballistics and energy weapons? You know, do they need to be equal, or do you think ballistics deserve to be a much faster time to kill on some of these larger ships?
I think ballistics should be faster, but you
Yeah,
should
I
have
think
less of them.
with
Obviously.
ammo counts, like there's a trade-off, right? It's pros and cons. Like
Yeah.
if you're someone who's not accurate or not a good pilot, you're gonna want infinite ammo, right? But if you know you can land your shots, ballistics make more sense.
Yeah, I think some dynamic balance between them is good. Having them be both the same, just look different would be strange and kind of pointless. So I like the change.
There's a long-term trade-off that goes into that too. Partly coming up with pyro, like you guys said, but I think another factor. I think back to the old Jumptown days, and this is stuff that's still. I'll start by saying I'm not a combat main by any stretch of the imagination here, and this will come out by the fact that I still make some of my decisions by things, from multiple patch iterations ago. But the thing at Jumptown back in the day was, right, if you had ballistics, is you might have defended Jumptown once or twice from invaders coming in, but you started getting low on ammunition, and the waves kept coming. And I think that's an effect too. It's like, okay, yeah, they're really powerful, but are you willing to give up whatever the objective is you're defending to go re-equip, rearm, and refuel?
Yeah.
Or are you going to bring energy weapons that you have the benefit that you never need to reload? And I prefer non-ballistic weapons in Star Citizen for that reason alone. I like not being tethered logistically back.
And that's
I reckon they could level this out with, like, if you use an energy weapon, it is a lot more of a heat issue. So if you used your energy weapons constantly, you'd have to wait a long cooldown for your coolers to kick in or something. Could they counter it in some way? Basically nerf everything. So I don't know.
See, there's a lot of ways they could go about it. It's just a matter of it gets complicated very quickly because there's so many ships, there's so many weapons, there's so much expansion they're going to do. But I'm excited to see where it goes. I don't think
this one.
Red Monster. I don't think we got your favorite.
I mean, aside from salvage, maybe this ties into that discussion. The distortion and EMP damage changes. That now, if you disable a ship with an EMP, it's got a 5-minute cooldown before that ship can power back on. And we've been testing that out a little bit, and you can go through and you can perform shipboarding action and stuff. I think there's I know Tomato and myself are both Saber Raven owners, where that ship its primary call has been the dual EMPs. It finally looks dangerous, and I'm excited about that because it's been a hanger queen for a long time. But
does distortion / EMP stop a ship from being able to self-destruct? I want to say no, but
we could test that out. I don't
feel
know
like somebody's tested it, but I can't remember what they.
Yeah,
if it doesn't, it's always going to be better to soft kill the ship.
Yeah,
which kind of sucks. So hopefully,
I believe it's whatever is not done in soft kill. So soft kill disables self-destruct, right?
Soft kill does disable self-destruct.
Yeah, so I think distortion does not.
There we go.
But if you distort, you got 5 minutes to go try and soft kill that ship. And I've shaped weapons off of a Vandal blade and left it just kind of neutered out there in space.
It'll be nicer that way too if pirates decide to be kind, because if you get attacked and you get soft killed and the people are like, hey, you're done, let us come take your stuff, you'd be like, okay, take my stuff and leave, and then you're just left there with a useless ship. But if you get disarmed via distortion, at least you can still fly away afterward.
Yeah,
that's true. Yeah.
So back to the salvage thing just before we move on, because for me that is the biggest thing 318 brings, but not just because it's a new profession, but for me, like bringing the reclaimer compared to, and it's interesting, and I'm really interested to hear Red's thoughts on this, because you have all your mining stuff going on in your like group mine streams. To me, group mining is not super multi-crewish in the way that when you look at like taking a reclaimer out, right, you've got to have somebody actually doing the whole scraping, but you got to have someone in back, which is what you don't have in a mole, right? That's actually moving the boxes off and kind of organizing things like that. And I've got a lot of friends that I've got into Star Citizen, mostly coming over from DCS. It's like they don't want to be the captain. They don't want to be a pilot. They want to be crew members. And they've not played Star Citizen since like backing for the first time and kind of enjoying IAE or something like that, because they've been waiting for this true multi-crew. And 318 for me is really like, that's what like I'm stares me in the face every time I log into it. It's like, wow, I can finally get those guys in here to actually go take this reclaimer out and go.
Yeah. The reclaimer's at least a 3-man job. I mean, I'd say minimum 3.
I'd say 4 to be safe, because you pilot 2 tractor beams, somebody in the back.
Yeah.
Or 2 salvage tools, and that's without the tractor beams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, the reclaimer is just going to get bigger and better as time goes too. But I mean, that's what I solo. I don't have a mole anymore, but I used to solo in the mole all the time.
Yeah.
Because you could. And I've tried soloing in the reclaimer. And 1, you sit in the wrong seat, you get stuck. But 2, just, you really can't. You know, you're like, all right, now I got to run all the way to the back of the ship so that I can go move the boxes.
Yeah.
Run all the way back. You know, you just can't do it. You really cannot solo it efficiently. And that's what I'm so excited about, is it's really, we're starting to see the reality of multi-crew come into the verse in a way that it hasn't yet.
Yeah.
It's
and
really
I kind of laid out some of my criticisms of the multi-crew mining, is that there's not a single rock in the verse right now that you can't break with a properly equipped prospector, right? You're doing a double surge method. You know, you can break that rock and haul it all back by yourself. You know, what we do in our multi-crew is, you know, we'll have 1 person on a laser and 1 person piloting for a mole. And if we get to a large rock, we'll just, you know, the pilot pops into one of the lasers and helps with the first break, and then can go back up if they want to keep the ship from bouncing. Or, you know, I mean, solo mole has been huge. You know, I
really hope they fix that issue. Sorry.
Yeah, they haven't been putting in anything that requires an actual second laser consistently, right? And that's one of the aspects I've brought up. And it's, you know, when we split up our roles in multi-crew, it's not about, you know, putting everybody into mining laser turrets. It's about saying, okay, these people are out there surveying, these people are running our security, and these are the couple of mining operators. You know, we'll have a mole crews max of 2, just for the convenience of having somebody in that pilot seat occasionally and having that second laser. So, but yeah, the reclaimer, absolutely. We were running it with 5 people and having a great time of it. You know, I've you know, profitability has still to be decided based on what balances they throw in there, but they've already made changes to the scraper modules and things that make a reclaimer more effective than a prospector. Well, you know, or even 3 or not a vulture. So
I think next year is the year of multi-crew. I mean, like you said, salvage is in. That's a huge step to it. Cargo refactor is big. We're getting the next version of the cargo refactor. We'll talk about that in a minute. With the freight elevators, you're going to have people who are loading your ships. You're going to have people who are resource managing, their engineers. We might have vehicle tractor beams, which means new operator modes that could come into ships. There's so much potential next year for multi-crew stuff. So I'm feeling that excitement too. Let's talk about next year. Let's jump into the exciting speculation stuff. So we just got the letter from the chairman, and I think it gave us some decent details about what's going on next year. It didn't really time anything out, but we did get confirmation of a couple of things that are for sure coming. So what I'm going to do is I'll read those out here for us, and then we will jump into kind of 319, and then from there keep going through the year, and you guys can say when you think one of these features that I list out might be coming. But what it said in the letter from the chairman was that they are aiming to get new item resource management in, bounty hunting V2, which is using a full tracking system with the ability to actively restrain and transport players and AI, ropes and stuff, persistent hangars with freight elevators, allowing for stored inventory and manual loading. And then towards the end of the year, they specify with this, they're also considering flexible player traversal, greatly improved interaction system, FPS scanning, a new star map, new MFDs, all kinds of things we saw at Squadron 42 besides the star map. But let's, like I said, scale it back a bit. 319. Let's all assume that they do get out 318 in January. and then in March or April, they want to get another update out. What do you guys foresee happening in that update? Anything in particular you think is for sure in the first quarter?
I hope it's master modes. But from what I understand, the letter from the chairman was strangely silent on master
It
modes.
was, yeah.
I don't
So-
think. I think didn't they say that Master Modes wasn't going to come out until? Well, they kind of hinted at it
4.0.
wasn't going to come out until Squadron came out.
Well,
Yeah.
they talked about some development for Squadron 42 that they wanted for master modes, but I don't know if
Yeah.
they said specifically that Squadron 42 will come out and that will bring master modes. So I don't know.
I think it'll probably be. I'm assuming late next year. That'd be cool if we got it in the first quarter patch though, because that's a big change. Be nice to
It's
get
a
our hands
huge
on
change.
that. Yeah. What else you guys have? Anything?
I
Not
mean,
even
what
that you
I'd
think
like
will
to
happen
see
that you
is
hope for. Yeah.
persistent hangers is what I would like.
Yeah.
That's a personal one
Why is
for
that?
no real reason.
No?
I want to be able to just have my stuff with the persistent energy streaming. I'd like to have everything laid out. You know, maybe have like a hangar with a couple ships laid out, or there's a screenshot somewhere. I don't have it, but there's like a cargo. It's like a medical bed, but for cargo.
Mm-hmm.
I want to have them on the side and want to load up cargo or like weapons and stuff. I
Okay.
don't know. I just like the idea of being able to have a little base that I can bring stuff back, keep it here. That is actual physicalized rather than an inventory thing.
Yeah.
You know?
I got you.
Build myself a little junk fort in the corner.
Exactly.
You're gonna have to pay for that.
This is my get rid of later pile.
Behold
mean,
my stuff.
I've got some of the old trophies and stuff like that. It'd be nice to actually.
I got a fish tank. Where's my fish
Yeah,
tank gonna
I've
go?
got a
Yeah.
jukebox.
Do you guys think that when we do get these persistent hangers, which now they're saying they expect them next year, you think they're gonna allow us to have all that kind of stuff that we got to put the flare in there, or do you think they'll be pretty basic?
We got to put it somewhere. But
Yeah,
yeah.
I hope
I
we
would
get
like
probably
to.
when they come out, they'll be basic, and then they might add like flare points in the hangar. You know,
I mean, we
But,
had them
I
in
mean,
the
the
old hangars,
hangars-
right?
The hangars are big though too, just from being able to drop stuff off. Because in the good news is that it looks like we're starting already to see some of this in 318. Hopefully, really, we get a lot more of it in 319. But it's obnoxious going back to even the reclaimer, right? It takes forever, and this is something I like as a flight sim guy, but to take that thing in and out of orbit. And so the last thing you really want to do is have a really successful, excursion in a reclaimer, and then get it back down to land at Hurston. And I would so much rather be able to have a hangar somewhere else that I could do the transfer with
Mm.
and move something into like an MSR to kind of do that. So for me, just the personalized hangar stuff, functional or not, it's exciting.
I just miss my Revel in York hangar.
Yeah, I'm wondering how they're gonna implement them because
Yeah, I'm
we can't get
curious.
the personal hangers right now. Are they gonna just instance hangers on each of the landing zones, or what exactly they're gonna do there is still kind of in question.
Mm.
What do you guys think of player transport or passenger transport gameplay? They mentioned that in the in the letter from the chairman. We've seen it, I think, maybe once or twice before, and it's kind of an important one. Is anybody interested in that?
I think it follows a theme, not a theme, an important theme of when you see another video game doing something that the community likes, that is enjoyable, that tells a story, and that enhances your gameplay, steal it and do it. So Elite Dangerous has had passenger transport missions and these sightseeing missions for years, right?
Yeah.
And obviously it's like you don't ever see the passengers and blah, 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 because it's Elite's a whole different game. But the idea of it was super exciting to the Elite Dangerous community when it first came out, and people just wanted to do it. People still do it. And so for Star Citizen to take that idea and make their own type of it, that's really exciting. Absolutely. More interaction, make the NPCs part of our story rather than just this guy we run by at the station,
And I'd throw in one of the other space sim games, Kerbal Space Program, that that they've got passenger missions with specific destinations, and it's while Kerbal's a completely different type of game, it's still enjoyable to do that. I'm excited about the prospect of doing that in Star Citizen. I hadn't quite gotten that far on the letter to the chairman yet, but
I don't want to see it until you can have a hostage situation. Like if you're a pirate and you can kind of stop the people going to where they want to go, and then you can somehow, well, I'll let you go if you pay up, and then you can do your mission.
Yeah.
That's a cool idea.
Yeah.
I'm excited about it. One, because I have a CCU for the Starliner, which it'll be really interesting to see how that kind of comes out. And the E1 that they announced earlier this year, to me, was really a high value thing. And what I think is important about that, though, is that the way I look at how CIG does things is that if that is coming in the next year, then that to me says they're working more on the NPC portion of the game, which, if you go back and if anyone follows, we know that there are supposed to be way more NPCs than we already have. And so if you're going to have these NPC transport missions in a way that is not like Elite Dangerous, right? Because we can see them. In theory, we should see them board the ship. We should see them if we walk back in the ship during quantum travel.
Yeah.
So the idea that these NPCs are coming in, to me, begins to start pointing to development of NPC crew. And I know that is a feature most of the Star Citizen verse is eagerly waiting for and dying for, especially as more multi-crew stuff comes out. A lot of ships are going to break from the solo standpoint if we can't start getting those NPC crews in.
Yeah.
So to me, that's kind of an omen, tea leaf reading.
Yeah, I like the idea of going out with a hammerhead full of NPC turrets. Just because sometimes I want to fly the hammerhead, but people aren't around. And sometimes I want to be part of a ship and have crew, and not always your friends are online. So I don't know. I think that
what would be really cool, Ollie, is if you could have an NPC fly your hammerhead across the system and tell it where to go, and then you're just one of the gunners. Obviously, he's not as good of a pilot as you are, but
yeah,
that's a mission on rails, basically.
Yeah,
I agree with the idea that passenger transport means more than just passenger transport. Because like you said, Leadnap, I mean, this includes them marking up AI to be able to navigate onto a ship, to find a usable in that ship, to sit down with that
We can't use the elevators. How are the NPCs going to do it?
We got a revolutionary solution to elevators, by the way. It's called stairs.
Big brain moves. That's 4D chess, man.
As far as I know, we don't even have ladders tier 2 yet. I think that got kicked down the roadmap last I checked.
Yeah, they talked about it in the letter.
If we don't have ladders tier 2, then don't expect stairs tier 2 anytime soon. Just saying.
Walking tier 3. Like 1 foot in front of the other. But yeah, the idea of this passenger transport, and also the other side of it, which they talk about, is the actively restraining people. It's like, that means we're going to be able to tie people up. I know, a little kinky, but like it's needed for bounty hunting and stuff like that. And then also transport people. They talked about how dragging people right now is not very reliable when you're transporting somewhere a long distance for things like bounty hunting, getting someone into your ship, stuff like that. And they talked about the idea of having a kind of over-the-shoulder fireman carry style of thing.
Fireman carry, please.
Yeah. So that maybe that's something that they're also going to look into when it comes to this, which would just be another great feature added for a new gameplay style. So that's cool. And honestly,
the thought of me getting tied up on stream though is terrifying. I can't get out of this situation, and like 4 pirates have stream sniped me, and now I'm tied up in the back of a reclaimer. What do I do?
We've talked about that a few times. What might happen there? I think when your character becomes either incapacitated or detained in some way, there may be a screen or a pop-up that comes up and says, hey, you've been detained. Would you like to give up and continue your journey elsewhere? Let's say that I detain a bounty and he's in the butt of my hawk and I'm taking him to prison, right? On his screen, he would see, would you like to try to wait for rescue, see what happens? Or would you like to give up and then you'll respawn in prison?
Yeah.
Start your prison sentence, and I will get to finish my gameplay taking your body to prison, or you're taking your NPC body to,
Yeah, I think they've talked about that.
I think that could work,
too. Officially speaking, I think they've mentioned
that works.
Capture.
Yeah.
I'm just worried about it like the idea of a fireman carry because I've got some, people in my community that really enjoy taking the dead bodies. So I'm a little worried about where that's going to go with them. Like, it's kind of like a
We're back to
batting
my
addiction
persistent
of some
hanger
sort.
again.
And now it's like they're hoarding the dead NPCs already, and this is just going to make it easier.
I mean,
So
we're
I'm a
just
little
bored.
worried.
Give us more to do in the game, and we'll stop doing weird breaking stuff.
Look,
Maybe.
1 million UEC to the first person who fills their personal hangar completely full of bodies, top to bottom. Just saying.
Is this like tier 0 necromancy?
Yeah.
You know that clip where all that cargo falls from the atmosphere all the way onto the ground? It's like
Yeah.
instead of cargo boxes, it's literally just going to be a month's worth of like captures.
You could do that right now by filling a ship full of dead body or full of bodies, and then just destroying the ship, and the bodies would all fall like
It's
a cup was
raining,
full of
man.
bodies. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
could set it up.
This got weird quick. I'm sorry.
Back to the topic at hand. Going into 2023, I guess since this is coming out in 2023, having gone into 2023, this is the first year we're going in with a vastly reduced roadmap. We've been doing the 4-quarter roadmap since 3.0, and then last year they made the decision to kind of shy it up a little bit, only give us like a quarter in advance. And unfortunately, with the way that 3.18 has played out, we now basically, for the next month, have no idea what's happening in development. We won't be, I think we might get a monthly report, but we're not going to be getting any roadmap round-ups. There's no release view updates. There's no progress tracker updates. We don't know what's going on first quarter of next year. Does that make you at all nervous? Does that bother you? Do you not care?
No, it doesn't bother me, and I'm not gonna say I'm famous for this, and maybe it makes me a really bad Star Citizen YouTuber, but I do not put a ton of stock into the roadmap, and that's just because I've been covering the game for a while. I mean, I'll use the Polaris as an example because it's back on the roadmap. Great, it's my favorite ship. I cannot wait for it to be in the game, but it's been on the roadmap before. It's come off the roadmap. The Merchantman's been put on the roadmap. It's come off the roadmap. And so for me, enough things go on and come off that really actually them shortening the timeline and saying, look, we're really kind of lining this up more is it's a little more honest. It gives me a little more hope that the Polaris actually comes out now. So it doesn't alarm me, and knowing that they're going into their break, that we're not going to have details. They're going to do their meetings in January to really decide kind of what gets the emphasis. So it doesn't worry me that it's so devoid right now. It'll get filled in. But I think it's actually a better thing that they've shortened the foresight on it so that we're not upset that something that they thought would come out in Q4 got moved. Yeah, it's too far off. It's such a big project. I'm okay with where it's at right now.
It's been a double-edged sword, right? That they can show their plans out for a year, but the plans change, and that's part of the nature of the development they're doing. Like, there's no other space game doing what they're aiming for, and so there's a lot of unknowns out there. They don't know how to plan for, and as things shift, people would lose faith in the project. But realistically, it was just it's the tool you take when you do this. So,
I think they
planning
just
4
shot
months.
themselves in the foot, really, because they've done it now. So I feel like there's an expectation for them to keep doing it and maintain it.
You mean the
And
longer
I think
roadmap?
if they stopped, and I think if they stopped or they were slow to update it, I think it would come across like, the project's slowing down or the project's losing focus.
Yeah.
But I think
They dealt with that a lot. I mean, over the years of them missing sort of like you said, the more extended deadlines, the 4 quarters out, 3 quarters out, how much those features shift around, people just thought that the project was literally spiraling the drain because they just couldn't get things delivered. And it's funny because the same thing's probably happening, but we just don't see it.
But I'm more of a actions speak louder than words kind of guy. And, this looking at, ahead to topics for later even, but for me, 2018, 2019 were these hallmark years of Star Citizen development. I mean, every patch, the game radically changed. And, it's COVID is probably what really hopefully this, doesn't get thrown off Twitch now because I said the bad words. But the, really derailed everything, I felt like. And 2023 for me, like, I feel like 318 is really CIG getting back in stride. And for me, the fact you look at 318 and there is so much coming out, and that leaves me, you can shorten the timeline on the thing that at least I don't regard as very accurate anyways. The people that are the haters, the salty citizens are going to sit there and be like, no, it's a scam. It's not working well. This is the proof in the pudding. They're going to say that anyways. They're going to say that regardless of what CIG does at the road. But shortening the roadmap and giving me actual results in the patch tells me, nope, the project is alive and well. We are seeing the progress we have been waiting for. And it leaves me believing that 319 is not 2 or 3 years away, and that it's going to be filled with good things in a way that 317.1 from 317.2 isn't.
Mm-hmm.
So I think their actions are delivering, where, again, they're always going to receive the backlash from people saying they're slowing down or they're closing shop or whatever. But the actions, to me, erase that doubt in my mind.
Yeah.
You
I think
guys...
also to their
go
credit for the 317 patch, they did talk about a lot of back-end service improvements, networking improvements. We went from 50 to 100 player cap. Like, that's a huge amount of development that went into making that work. But the players, we don't see a new gameplay, or we don't see a new ship. What we see is the server count increasing, and it's an abstract concept for a lot of people, but that was a lot of development that went into making that possible, and some of the other systems that they're working on. So I think, to the letter in the chairman from back in like May, they talked about this being a slow time as far as the front end gameplay, because they're trying to get those back end services in a state where we can move into that 4.0. We can go into the persistent enemy streaming and unlock that blocker that's been holding us back from the next generation of what the game is supposed to be.
Yeah, and I didn't mean any of that to be a negative on those patches.
Yeah.
Because you got to get the back end. If the foundation is trash, the house is just going to fall apart. And the foundational stuff doesn't have the ritzy excitement, right, that salvage gets.
Yeah.
But 318 to me, it is different from, 318. Sorry,
Yeah,
all mixed up in the numbers
I
here.
get what you meant.
Is the PTU right now is so different from
Mm-hmm.
what we have, that it really shows. And like I said, even though the back end stuff doesn't feel there, we're, like I said, and I'll leave it at that, is I really feel like they're reaching their stride again. They've really picked back up, and that's what's leaving me not afraid.
So you guys are kind of feeling okay with the fact that we're going into the year blind, just because you feel like they've started to really prove that they can get stuff into the game, and you're not too worried that even though we can't see it, they aren't going to be like holding things back or anything like that.
Well, so I want to dial it back, like, I don't know, a year and a half or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
At one point, CIG, they talked about this pretty openly. They were like, look, the next year or so is going to be kind of slow on the PU. And I think they knew why. And then we kind of heard as it was coming out, like, okay, Squadron 42 is becoming more of a focus, blah, 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 blah. Like, it's not like they said, like, we're going to have tons of updates for the PTU, and then they didn't. It was, they said the PTU was going to be slow because they're redoing a bunch of back-end stuff, and Squadron 42 has kind of become the focus. And then that's what happened, So I can't really fault them for communicating that that's going to happen, and then it happening. I can't judge them that much for that. There's little things you can nitpick all day, but the overall theme is, they realize, like, hey, to make this car go, we got to change out the transmission. And you're not going to see that because we're not putting new rims on it. We're not putting new tires on it. We're not putting a new hood on it. We're not, changing all these things. We're changing out the transmission, and you're probably not going to see that, but it's going to happen over the next year, and all the little flashy updates, aren't going to be as common,
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, it's just kind of what I've seen and what's transpired. And So from a micro lens, you have these things to nitpick, but from a macro lens, you know, you zoom out a ways and you're like, oh, it's kind of gone the way that they said it was going to go. So I don't really have a lot of judgment there, you know.
Yeah, the time is the problem, but the hits, the steps that they're trying to take seem to mostly follow what they say. Some of the stuff gets a little lost, but I actually just had a talk earlier, was that yesterday, with Montoya about how they haven't quite gotten any org features in, even though that was technically around the same time that persistence was supposed to come in, but you know, priorities. But I agree, they're off a bit on timing. Things are difficult, but they tell us things are going to be difficult, and we know that they're kind of off on timing. And kind of like you guys were saying, you know, 318 PTU is showing that the advancements are coming in. They might not be flashy, but they are carrying the game forward.
I think 318 is both flashy and technical behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Like, I think if they had just brought in the player facing stuff like the cargo, you know, being physicalized and things like that, that would have been one thing. But I think doing all that stuff plus, and the new locations, and doing all that stuff plus all the back end Gen 12 and like persistent entity streaming, I think it's like a double whammy. So I think CIG have at this time earned a little bit of breathing space in the sense that they are delivering changes and the game is changing and it's getting better. And I think that's cool. I mean, it's not perfect. The PTU needs work still before it goes live, but
needs work. Yeah.
But it is definitely. To go back to your point earlier, I don't really want to go back to the 3.17. I'm enjoying 318 for everything it does do.
Same. It really just makes it. You don't think it makes too much of a difference, but when you can see things just sticking around, like coming across a burning spaceship on a moon, you don't realize how much we've been missing that until you see it.
Poor
like,
Olsa, the amount of crash ships in the ring is just like brilliant. Because like previously that would just disappear, right? And you roll up and you go, oh, Port Olsa has had a rough day. People keep crashing into it.
But like the one most disappointing factor of like taking down an Idris was after it goes through its big explosion animation, the large chunks of that ship just poof disappeared, right? And you're like, okay, like where's the rest of the evidence? Like that was cool, but like before the animation was even done, the chunks of that hole have despawned. But you know, now you've got chunks there left over, and you can actually go up, get up close and personal, get more of a sense of the scale of it, and you know, call in your.
Can you salvage it? Sorry.
Yeah,
you should be able to now. Yeah,
should be able to.
Somebody told me they were salvaging one the other day. So yeah,
I haven't salved a killed Idris yet because
I'm for those of you that don't know, I'm kind of like a citizen baby. Like I've not been around that long. I'm yet to see an Idris in game.
Ooh.
Oh yeah.
Other than other than you know the patrols that have happened.
You haven't gotten
like
to do Xenothreat?
stuff. Nope.
Oh man, that's the best event. You're gonna love that.
Xeno's my favorite.
Yeah,
But
it's
it's
gonna be good.
But all those things, I'm looking forward to checking out.
Let's talk about next year as a whole. This is kind of a more of a fun question. What is something that you just do not want to go all of next year without seeing get added to the game?
I mean, is it a cheap shot to say the Polaris?
No, you deserve it.
No, by all means. I mean, I'm sure ships are on the top of a lot of people's lists. For me, I'm gonna go. For me, it's a new star map. I need it. I can't go another year with this star map. It's gonna drive me nuts.
The current one is so dysfunctional.
For me, it is. I mean, the updated bounty hunting stuff is really exciting, but salvaging modules, because when you destroy a ship, you see modules like you're floating through the ship, and you see them like, oh, there's the shield generator, there's the power plant, and it's like, just let me tractor beam that into my ship, you know?
Yeah.
So I think it may not be that far off, depending on how much either physicalization or actualization they need for like being able to buy and sell those things from a cargo grid. I don't know, but it seems like it's kind of there-ish, especially with persistence. So like salvaging modules and chunks of ships and weapons and stuff is really exciting. That's very cool, like org gameplay, to be able to build up, like, oh, I took out this, high-level NPC and he had like a grade A military, jump drive or whatever, I just think that's cool.
Physicalized components are kind of like salvage in that we've just been hearing about them so long. and I keep thinking they must be, you know, a year, 2 years away, and just every year that we don't see them.
Yeah.
That would be nice.
I mean, like right now, you can board somebody's. I had somebody test this. You can board somebody's reclaimer with like an FS9 or a railgun. You can go into their ship and open up the interior and shoot the module and destroy like their, you know, shield gens or their quantum drive. You can take it to 0% health. Like you can damage it inside the ship. It's cool.
That's
I
awesome.
do have to say the reclaimer power plant is one of my favorite assets in game.
It's very cool. How are you gonna
Yeah,
salvage that?
Yeah, it's gonna be unique, that's for sure. Or the gravity generators on Origin ships.
Yeah, those are cool. There's
Those
a
are
lot
cool.
of components in ships that I'm like, how are you ever gonna get this off of the ship if you wanted to take it out? 'Cause they're just massive, and the hallways are not big enough for them. But you know,
Yeah,
Just
how
make
would
new
you
doors.
repair them? You know,
Yeah.
like do a engine refit. How does that get in and
that's
out?
just another one of those things that I'm like, good luck, CIG.
I mean, it's a step towards the idea of like, okay, my ship got soft killed, so like a bunch of my modules are at 0%. I can't just heal them, you know, or repair them. So I got to have a friend of mine come with his Cutlass Black or whatever and bring me a new power plant that I can install. Like that's just so cool, you know. Like your ship is soft killed, and it's like, all right, there's some things I got to repair, but if you repair them, the ship will fly again. You know,
Right.
That's so cool.
You know, an interesting question on that to CIG is what if I have an extra on board? You know,
Slot it in.
Engineering
well, right,
gameplay,
but
That should
baby.
work.
right, but in theory, an EMP should switch the polarity of of the other components as well. But it is an interesting question
It'd probably be
Could
like
you-
it only affects modules that are online.
that are on.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
Well, and that's what I
yeah.
was. Yeah.
Gotta be
That
powered
makes
on to
sense.
get impacted. You know.
I don't know.
That'd be
That's a good one though. XeroState physicalized components are like pretty important, and they're big for salvage gameplay. But we don't see too much. We saw some work on them in the past. They were showing us subcomponents and stuff, but really not much talk about it.
Mm.
Anybody else have something that they really wanted to see next year?
Oh man, I want to see Pyro. I'm excited to get that first trip through the jump gate, come out on the other side, and start that exploration, and you know, see what Pyro's got for us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Pyro's probably the big one for me, both in the sense that one, don't think I could do another sitcon where they hype me about going to Pyro. I've softly knocked CIG in some videos on that, I feel like, but I also just the jump point, like right now, the way the verse works is based on it being a single system. And I think once jump points exist, you create these new choke points in the verse. I think the entire dynamic of how people go and where they go to do things will change, even in the Stanton system.
Yeah.
Piracy is going to ramp up heavily near those jump points. And that's going to leave certain industrial people more free to go do things in the system where pirates currently hunt them down, because the risk for reward is going to be so much better at the jump point.
Yeah.
So yeah, Pyro for me is, and if not Pyro, then Nyx. You know, give me jump points and give me a second system. And I think that's, you know, when we were talking about 317 to 318, I felt like 318 has been very much a put up or shut up patch for CIG, and they have shown up for that. And now I think the next piece of that, the next big kind of put up or shut up moment, is giving us Pyro.
Just a quick
Talked
comment.
about it for years.
A quick comment on that. I think this is probably the first patch that has been hyped up by CIG that came out, and I was actually impressed. Like I felt like it met the level of expectations that I had set, and they kind of downplayed the expectations a little bit going into it, which was probably smart on their part. But it's nice. It's nice to get satisfied with the patch.
Under
that reminds
promise
me.
and over deliver.
Yes,
It is.
absolutely.
IT
Definitely
101.
the first.
Yeah.
Setting expectations, but it's the it's the opposite of the other patches in the way that they downplayed it. I went into the PTU like, all right, there's gonna be salvage and a couple of other things, and then everywhere you turn, you're like, oh, that's different.
Something new to do. Yeah, it was nice. The comment about how much the law changes with Pyro coming in and jump points is a big one. I think gets missed a lot, because right now you'll have a conversation with somebody about, you know, a player is flying from a city up to a space station, let's say New Babbage up to Port Tressler, and they just get shot down and killed by a pirate. In Stanton, you're going to say, hey, that's griefing. Like, there's no reason for you to do that. That's dumb. In Pyro, that's piracy. They'd probably be okay with it. It's like once you start to get that separation of play spaces, the definitions and the way that people interact with the law start to change, and hopefully that leads to kind of a more, I guess, straightforward experience in Stanton. Something that's more you can expect more.
It gives players more freedom in different areas, but it also gives the devs more freedom. So let's say, and this is pretend here, that there is a high security system, then there's Stanton, which is like a medium security system, and then there's like Pyro, which is nullsec, basically. In Stanton, like, crime happens, but there's some consequences, blah, 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 blah. Like, it's kind of like a do anywhere, go anywhere, do anything kind of system. Pyro is very like high risk. And then if you had a high security system, I don't know what it would be, but let's say that they had a high security system. Yeah. The idea is that you kill a guy and like the entire system is after you. Everywhere you go, there's police chasing you, or like, security chasing you, that kind of thing. And that allows the developers to start creating, I think, rules that say, hey, this is a safe place for new players because this is a high security system. Profits aren't necessarily high here, but risk is also very low. And then what you can find in Pyro, the risk is much higher typically, but the profits are also much higher. Your possibilities are almost endless in a place like that. It's more freedom for the player. And when we have the one system, it's very hard to make one system for every type of player.
Exactly.
The type of player that wants to have more risk and more reward, and then the type of player who wants to play it safe and just enjoy the game and take screenshots or whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a ship guy that matters too, because using the Reclaimer as an example, or maybe the Mole, but the Reclaimer is probably a better one. In that higher security system, a Reclaimer isn't going to make money. Right. But it is the sort of system that you could put a 2-man crew on a Reclaimer and say, yep, the pilot will run in back and do the boxes and one guy on the scraper, sort of a scenario. If you want to make money with the bigger ships where you're required to take 7 or 8 people, that you got to cut whatever that profit is 7 ways now. However you want to look at doing that. If you want to go into Pyro, that's where the money is. That's where there's plenty of it to be there, but you better have that full crew because you're going to have to man the turrets, and you should probably take some security with you. That sort of value to the ships is important, and I think that'll also begin to change the dynamic about what ships people choose to take. If you're in that higher security system, no reason to go any bigger than a vulture.
Yeah.
It'll make money, and you're not going to get attacked, so what do you care?
And I think also that ties into a longer term reputation for players. Like right now we have the crime system, and prior to 318, you go murder a whole crew in a Reclaimer or a Mole, right? And you have maybe a 4 or 5 hour long prison sentence. You can be out in 20 minutes with a couple of missions. With 318, that's a much longer experience now, where it starts to balance that out. The risk versus reward, you're going to lose potentially 1 million credits worth of modules and a load on a Mole, where the person who did that gets 20 minutes in prison to escape. And looking at potential features in the future, I don't know if it's on the roadmap, but kind of that long-term player reputation that goes on a permanent record that can be looked up and pops up in scan data for players to say, okay, like, is this someone I should trust? If I'm out at an outpost and somebody's over there in a random ship, can I look at what their dossier says and decide whether I should start calling in for security now, or maybe interact with them in some other way? So
yeah, there's going to be a lot of options when it comes to server meshing and I guess the Pyro system itself. We've just now seen the letter from the chairman for the end of 2022, where they're talking a little bit about what's going to happen next year with server meshing and everything. I'm going to read a little excerpt from the report here. It says the next step, and this is regarding server meshing coming into the game, is to separate the replication layer, the in-game cache that remembers all dynamic object states, from the game server, and have scalable replication layer workers that communicate the state changes between the various game clients, servers, and replication layer. So that's a lot of mumbo jumbo, but they included the replication layer to work with persistent entity streaming, and it's kind of the separation of the simulation and the data that they're actually saving. And the putting this in that letter was kind of interesting because it wasn't really a big detail they pointed out in the last one when they talked about sort of going from PES to server meshing, but it does sound like this could be a little bit more time in between that they're kind of trying to slip this in and be like, hey, there's decent amount of work that we're going to need to do, so expect this. But from what they've said in that letter, and from what you guys have seen in the past month or two, do you think we might actually see Pyro by the end of 2023? Like, realistically speaking.
I don't think so. Because I don't mind it either, because I feel like Pyro is going to be such a huge fix, as in it's going to make players who are on the orbit of Star Citizen come back. They maybe have heard of Pyro, they played a bit of Star Citizen, and they feel like they had the Star Citizen experience, and they're waiting for Pyro to come in. And I think CIG should just be patient in time. I say that lightly, but they should be patient to release Pyro, because if they release Pyro and the elevators don't work, or insert weird bug here, then it's just people are just gonna think the game hasn't progressed regardless of whether or not Pyro's in the game. So personally, I want them to make sure like the foundation's there, those weird bugs are not there, and then release Pyro. That's my take. It's a bit of a controversial one, because I know you guys you've done this rodeo before, and you've waited for Pyro for a long time.
We're waiting.
I fully support the idea of slowing down and doing it right, because like we're only gonna get Pyro launched once, right? And the better they do that, you've developed that system once, right? We develop a second star system, and then developing the third, fourth, and fifth. Those will hopefully all learn from the experiences they've had from 1 and 2. But you need to spend the time up front to make sure it's done right. So
I think looking at it for me, I think Pyro could be in by the end of next year. I think that's a reasonable goal, but in setting expectations too, what does that Pyro look like, right? I mean, and this is what takes me back to thinking about 3.14, 3.15. I'm fine with Pyro coming in, and it's essentially just a Lagrange point, right? We get the jump point, and you come in and it's Stanton a la how it was years ago, where there are planets, they don't have their moons necessarily. There's nothing on them, kind of like how Crusader had been for so long, just kind of placeholder. And I think that has to happen for me, because the technology of giving us a second system on the back end is pretty heavy. And I would rather CIG put us through those paces with a Pyro system that's pretty empty. It's lawless. There's plenty of wrecks in there. There's plenty of asteroids to go mine. There's reasons to go there, but there's not much there, and there's not a lot of objects in it necessarily yet. And that gives them time to work out those details. Versus, I think some people, and I'm interested in what you guys think on this, want a fully fleshed out Pyro system. But for me, I'm fine with getting how we used to have Stanton, and then them populating it. And hey, in the next patch, Pyro 2 is going to be fleshed out, and that'll be really exciting, and it kind of gives you that build up. But for me, I have questions on the long-term piece of the project and on the eventual release of the game, that CIG has to have procedural generation in place in order to develop all these systems, because if it takes them a decade to build a system, then my great-grandchildren will enjoy the release. And so for me, the time is kind of now for CIG to start really pushing that. How do we start implementing these different systems? They don't have to be perfect. They don't have to be full. But to start, let's start working out the jumps. Let's start seeing how the servers have to bounce you from one system to another system. And I don't mean server system, in-game system.
I think
Yeah.
for me personally, is like pyro from a like I guess I'm thinking at it from a like CIG project perspective that it needs to come out and it needs to be finished is the wrong word, but it needs to be almost like it needs to be at a
Populated.
place
Robust,
populated. It
perhaps.
needs the
Yeah.
location. It needs to be fleshed out. And I think you're probably right, and that it will come out and it will be somewhat finished. And you'll, like you said, you'll be able to go there, do some mining and whatnot. But I don't think it's going to be detailed in comparison to Stanton. I think that's how it will come out. I wish it didn't. I wish it would wait until it was ready. I don't know what chat thinks of that or you guys think of that, but I kind of, from a project perspective, I think it's better off waiting.
To be fair, Stanton is a test bed for a lot of things. So it's actually possible that Stanton will become less densely populated with little areas and things to do. I'm not sure of that, but because Stanton's the only place they have right now to test things, there's pyro assets in Stanton right now. Some of those like outposts and stuff, like it's pretty clear that like, oh, this asset was clearly made for pyro and they put it into Stanton.
Yeah.
That being said, I think I'd agree mostly that when pyro comes out, I'd like to see the system of pyro be relatively fleshed out. Things to do, places to go, all the moons and planets done, maybe some locations not in, whatever. But I'd like to see them build a system. Now, that being said, I think that releasing a system, a whole system, and having the community test that system and releasing server meshing at the same time is a huge undertaking that would be insanely difficult for the community to test, and B, for the devs to get all of that right at the same time for one patch release. So I'll say what I think maybe should happen, and then I'll say what I think will happen. What I think should happen is that they complete Pyro to a place where they can say, we can populate this with players. And then when you go to the main menu, they have an update where they say, Pyro is now ready to go in and you two go there. But you have to choose, hey, I want to log into Pyro at the main menu. Pyro is its own set of servers, not server meshed yet. And it allows us as players and as a community to go into Pyro to test it in that vacuum of we are in Pyro, we are testing some Pyro stuff, get the devs feedback on different things, allow them to flesh it out, and then say, okay, we have Stanton, we have Pyro. They've both been kind of given some feedback by the community. They're in a good spot individually. Now we can work in a big patch cycle to mesh those together. I don't know if putting out Pyro and putting in server meshing between the two is really a great idea all at once. I think that's it'd be too much bandwidth, I think. But maybe that's just me. But
sounds like a more hardcore version of what happens with 318, to be honest.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Red.
I do agree that separating the release of Pyro along with the server meshing, those are both major significant changes. You'd want to get those right individually on their own. I do see, and it sounds like they've already done the amount of work required to make Pyro feel populated, that when we get it released, I'd be disappointed if we got a Pyro that is simply a Port Olisar over a Crusader that we can't fly to. That I think you need to deliver on the planets and the moons. We've had Stanton as the test bed where they've learned how to do those things correctly over the years. The 2.63 patch, whatever it was when we first got that. We need to be able to have a populated system with things to do, places to go, places to visit that is maybe not as entertaining or as populated as Stanton is, but at least be 60 or 80% of the amount of content you can create in Pyro in order for it to be something that people actually want to go in and engage with. Right.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting because we're looking at it from two different sides. To me, what I want is, and to kind of take exactly how Zero put it, because I don't think it's possible to put it in such a way that we could just get the fully fleshed out system and the jump points and everything, and it's just all there. I don't think the back end is ready for that. And so for me, what most important Pyro represents to me is the ability to go through the jump point and be in a second system. And that's why I was saying what I would be okay with and would be ideal to me is getting the jump point, getting the second system, being able to go between them and have CAG really refine that and make that work. And then from there, I know CAG can build a system because I've watched them build Stanton over the years. Then they drop Stanton in, or sorry, drop the whole Pyro system in and kind of in its entirety. But to me, getting the back end of going between the two comes first. And listening to you guys, you're saying, if I have to go to the menu to switch between the two, I don't care. I just want a more fleshed out, a second system to play it.
I wouldn't care
think-
about that for a patch cycle, you know, while they get some things
Right.
ready to get it
Yeah.
in the mesh. But
And I
Can't
think,
do it long term.
I think
Just
it comes
short term.
it comes from how long you've been waiting. Honestly, I would be cool with that out maybe last year, the beginning of 2022, like when we were originally expecting Pyro, but we've had so much time for Pyro to progress while server meshing is being worked on that I want to see it complete. Not complete like, oh yeah, 10 years it won't be different, but I want to see the next version, you know, like the Reclaimer Derelict, the Caterpillar Derelict, these were all like the next version of the Derelicts they had before. I want to see how they can step it up from Stanton now. How can you make a system that feels more like a system and less like just a play box? And, you know, it also comes down to the whole idea of they say that Pyro needs server meshing. They will be launching together. Are they hooked on that? Because it's not the server meshing in between the jump points, right? That's something that they could probably separate with a different sort of loading process. It's that simulation of the system you're in. So do they really absolutely need server meshing for Pyro, or could they somehow figure out how to decouple those? But either way,
I don't think that there's no way that they don't have a way to place you in a system
Mhm.
without them being meshed. Like they would have to attach it to, in my analogy, they would have to attach it to the main menu via like a drop down. But they already sort of do that when you make a character, you know. You choose your landing zone and you choose your spawn location, that kind of stuff. So it could just be a drop down, you know.
Right.
Would you like to go to Stanton today, or would you like to go to Pyro today and go and play there? Just not for long, obviously, but it just feels like they can. I don't see why they couldn't, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you be okay with an instance load? You fly to the jump point, similar to like going to the main menu, right? You fly to the jump point, you arrive at the jump point. Do you want to go to Pyro? Yes. And you load over.
Interestingly,
So it actually
that's
flies
sort
through.
of. I don't want to say that happens, but okay. Let's say that you are in a party. We're in a party together,
Right.
and I'm at the main menu, and I load in, but you're already in a server. You get a pop up right now that says, "Hey, your party leader has launched into a server. Would you like to change servers?" And you
Right.
click yes, and it changes you to that other server. It doesn't always work, but it usually does. So that's kind of a thing already, sort of ish, where it can take you from one place and put you into another place based upon, you know, a game decision of either a party member, or in this analogy, you go to a jump point and it says, "Would you like to go to Pyro?" Yes, and then you actually load out of Stanton into Pyro.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'd say it's doable. Yeah.
But it doesn't sound like they want to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
That's
seems
not
like
the
they want to
CIG
do both
way.
at once.
Yeah.
And you know, maybe there's a lot more in the back end that they've got
Oh, of course.
where they can see that, you know, because we can't see that, right? If
Yeah.
they think they can do it, then I'm all for it, you know.
I'm gonna assume that they know what the most efficient way to go about implementing this is.
Let's hope so.
I don't think they know
Yeah.
how to design games.
That's
I mean,
a bold statement.
Well, you know, the way I see it, you either trust that they're doing what they can, or you think that they're incompetent and like stop putting the money and effort in. I'm gonna sit here and
Making
assume
games
that
is hard, man.
yeah, I'm gonna assume that they're gonna do what they can to best put it in, and the
Yeah.
way that they're doing it, it works better than, you know, how we're saying it should
I
be
don't
done.
know that I would put it as binary as either they can or that they'd be incompetent. As somebody who works in IT, and I'm not a software engineer though, but like the amount of things I interact with on a daily basis where this is how it was programmed to work and we thought it worked, but they kind of have to tweak it. I don't see it necessarily of a point of incompetence, but a point I regularly make to people that are like, you know, all these other games have procedural generation. Why doesn't Star Citizen? Why doesn't Star Citizen have this? Oh, someone else did this. And it's like, yeah, the tools are out there that someone else has done, but no one has ever put this together like CAG is trying to do. And they're in a lot of ways forging kind of a new frontier here. And so it's to me, not so much oh well, it didn't work because they were incompetent, but they launch it for us to, stress test in a sense, because they're really building something new. So I guess that's kind of to me why,
I mean, it's a trial and error process, right? Like,
right.
Yeah.
they're going to have an idea of what they want to do, but they're not always going to know 100% whether or not they've got planned is going to work.
Yeah.
You guys want to hear some depressing math we did?
Sure.
Always.
It's sort of depressing. So we talked about 125 systems, right? Or 120 systems. And we started talking about how long CIG thinks it's going to take them to make a moon or a planet, right? And they were like, if they can get making every moon or planet fully featured, fully fleshed out in 4 days, and we did like a conservative number of moons and planets per system. It was like something like 11 years to get to 120 systems. So I was like, they're going to have to find a way to make moons and planets faster.
To be honest, that is so much sooner than I would think they'd reach 120. I'm not.
Our numbers were conservative. We were like 7 moons per system, 3 planets per system on average. And then we just took that average and said, if they can make 1 moon or planet every 4 days and like be done with it, then it's going to take like 11 years. So the idea that they can implement some kind of procedural generation to make moons and planets is extremely important. They need to teach a system to make star systems in their game. They have to do it.
Yeah.
Because if they don't, we're going to be dead before the game is done.
And it feels like that's what they've been doing, right?
I think they've been teaching. Yeah, they've been figuring out how to make moons and planets and things, which is good. But
here's one prime example of like them populating a system after the procedurally assisted generation part is done. You look at the racetracks that they're introducing. They brought in the snake pit. What did he say? It was maybe a couple of weeks of development time with, I mean, how many hours did he spend in there? It's going to be shortened significantly as they start learning more. They've got multiple other racetracks coming in, and part of it's placing the assets, but also bringing in the racing gates and the checkpoint gates, that didn't exist there. But they're delivering a lot more of those assets to populate, and they've shown that developer time is pretty limited requirement for each of those locations. But it's each one provides something unique or something interesting to do.
Right. Yeah, it's
maybe
always adding
3 or
into
4 of those features, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we spent a lot of time talking about, I guess, server meshing in general. So I'm not going to keep you guys too much longer since we're already running pretty long on this one. But I want to ask about, we talked about kind of the lead up to server meshing. That would be static server meshing, the introductory segment of the tech that will come with 4.0. But after that, we know they have to then expand from static to dynamic server meshing, basically allowing for servers that can handle the load of spaces that change size in the game. What do you guys, have you even thought about that? What's your timeline in your head, theoretically, on when that, like, I know it's crazy, but I want to hear what you guys think of that.
I wouldn't even want to guess. That's, yeah.
Yeah, we got to get this part first before I can even think about what that would take.
If they get a vision and they get a baseline, which I think we're seeing a baseline come out, the idea of server meshing, they're figuring out what they want, quanta, cargo refact. I mean, all these things are like, this is like changing out transmissions, right? This is the important stuff that's under the hood.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to see what they do with creating systems, planets, and moons, and how they can create them faster. Because right now we've got almost 2 systems in 10 years. And unless there's an exponential increase in speed, what then? So there has to be some changes there. There has to be an exponential increase in that speed of development.
I don't know about you guys, but I would be genuinely happy with just 10 systems. Like, I know you said 120, but...
Well, you backed in 2015.
Yeah.
Right? So you're probably happier with 10 systems. But people who backed in 2013, when there were backer rewards like, we're going to have this many systems and do this many things, probably won't be that happy with just 10 systems, To be honest, I mean, it's not that they wouldn't play the game, they wouldn't enjoy the game. It's just that it wouldn't be what they were told would happen,
Yeah, I would be okay with 10 systems in the sense that it offers me so much more gameplay than I think I need. Like, even 3 systems, like, let's be honest, they could fill Stanton with a certain amount of gameplay, and that would be a huge game on its own. Mm-hmm. So, like, in terms of things to do, or like what it would be like at launch or something, 10 systems, yeah, no, fine, perfectly fine to me. But
Also,
I
I
don't.
like the interaction with players, and with over 120 systems, like how often are you going to bump into people?
Yeah.
Well, I will say this. I can't remember where I saw it. I was reading, it's in the chairman letter somewhere, but now I've lost it. Where he talks about how many people they want on a single server shard eventually. And he said tens, plural, tens of thousands. So if there's 10 systems and there are tens of thousands of players in that same shard, you'll bump into people all the time. You know?
Well,
So
it's what Chris wants.
yeah, it's what he wants. I'm not saying it's what happened, but even if they can get to 2,000 players over 10 systems, is that's 200 per system.
quite a
Like you're gonna
few,
bump into
yeah.
people all the time.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think when you start introducing the player-owned settlements and player-designed settlements, once we get Rastar in our hands, everybody with their Pioneer and any other, vehicle, outpost crafting, I think that's going to generate a lot of population that maybe CIG doesn't have to do themselves. But 20
Yeah.
systems there might start to feel a little crowded when everybody's got an 8-kilometer land claim.
Yeah.
Well, and I don't like the idea of saying 10 years, 2 systems, because Pyro's been developed a lot faster. And I agree that we need exponential growth, but I don't think the graph is necessarily as bad as it seems. Pyro, we don't really know exactly how long they've been working on it. And when I look at the roadmap, the way they put certain things in there, get a little concerned, like there's nothing there now. I know that's not the case because they've been showing us stuff, but I think legitimately Pyro's going to take longer. Nyx probably coming after that will go a lot faster. And I really think that, yeah, we're looking at a couple of systems a year. And even though, yes, even, 11 years to completion of 125, in the same way that we have ships that will not come into the game until after release, there are going to be systems that don't come in until after release.
Oh,
saying
yeah.
that 11 years, and I know, I don't want to put words in your mouth, and Zero and be like, yeah, no, he's saying it's not going to release
Confirmed.
for another 11 years.
Quote him.
But
as
the
long as you
idea
make
that
a Spectrum post complaining about it, then I'm fine with it.
fair enough.
Just a Reddit post.
But I actually like the idea that even after the game is released, that there will continue to be development that comes on. And I'm okay, like I said, with the idea that, hey, at release there's 10 systems. That 10 systems is going to feel huge compared to what we have all played with for the last number of years.
I hope.
Well, the
we have
exciting
10
thing
by
is
then.
that, let's say they teach a system, a computer, right? They teach HAL 9000 to build systems and planets and moons that are interesting and unique. They do that well enough that within 10 years, there's 120 systems. They keep going past 120. Why not? Just keep making them. Make 1,000, maybe not 1,000, but maybe make 500. Who knows? Then you can start building out server meshing to the point where you get it all working and you just keep adding meshes, and you could have 50,000 players in the same shard all playing together. I mean, and this is copium to the max, but the idea is there, It's just whether or not they can make that kind of thing happen,
I think the bottom line though is like with Pyro coming out this year, that discussion is like the reality is it's not. I don't think it's the priority right now. It's
Oh
Squadron.
yeah. Well, and they said that over a year ago. Squadron
Yeah.
42 is shifting. We're shifting our priority to Squadron 42 even more. We're gonna get that out.
Yeah.
So that's kind of
So-
where we're at in this holding.
So this whole
pattern a
like
little bit.
server meshing and stuff, I don't see it anytime soon. Personally.
Well,
But a point that goes to that and bringing Squadron 42 up like that is this again, primarily a ships kind of guy from a content creator standpoint. I've said about the Polaris, and I've said this about other ships too. And even though like I said earlier, really want the Polaris in game, I'm comfortable with some of my favorite ships not coming out yet, because I think about if the Polaris would have come out in 2018, how kind of crappy it would be compared now to some of the other ships we're getting. That they've gotten so good at this that I'm excited to be like, no, you know what? I'll wait, because I know that by waiting, I'm going to get rewarded with something that's really cool.
Well, I hope that
down the
becoming
road.
good at it means they can do it in a more exponential
Yes.
fashion. That when you talk about building 120 systems, the speed has to increase, and that's part of being good at it.
Right.
Well, going from the conversation about the systems, and I'm glad you brought up Squadron, because this final question I wanted to pose to you guys is mostly about Star Citizen, but it includes the whole project overall. I kind of want to know just sort of if it's changed really for you. Ollie, you're the newest person, I think. So obviously over the last year, I can't imagine how much it's changed, but your understanding, and let's not talk about kind of what we're playing right now, but your idea, this goes crazy, but your idea of what end game sort of content, like final gameplay in Star Citizen would be, has that changed over the years as they've shifted development, added new things, and talked about things changing?
I don't know. It's still kind of the same. Like Star Citizen's kind of so annoying because it's like the potential is always there, and it feels so close all of the time to like what I imagine Star Citizen to be, And I don't know whether that's because I'm projecting what I want onto the game, or the game is actually starting to get really close. And like I said, I've only been here, when in the drought you guys were saying earlier, but for me, I spent 7 months learning what Star Citizen is, and it was like kind of an amazing experience learning what the game is. And for me, the future is just more of what I did this year, just like the game expanding, features coming in. I said I haven't seen an Idris sort of in game yet. Like I've still got to experience that, and like the game for me is just like more of that stuff. Like Pyro is just what I did in Stanton over 7 months in a different system. That hasn't changed since when I started 7 months ago.
So something that sounds a little bit different from you is that you kind of are here for the game now. Like you joined the game and you were playing it because it was there and ready to go at that time.
Yeah, like I've got a video on my channel, must be 2015, of me going in the Phoenix and flying to Port Olisar, which I think was like the only space you could fly around, right? And my reaction in that video is basically the same reaction I have now, which is just like, there's nothing quite like Star Citizen. Walking around, seeing the ship and the detail that you get, it's just a really cool game to be in. When it works, it's really, really good. And I'm quite happy with how it is, warts and all.
Cool. How about you, Leadnap?
So, kind of in the same way that Ollie puts it, right? Like, what I think about, in a little kind of back history for me, because I remember when Star Citizen was announced, and I was excited about what they were saying. Also, pivotal point in my life, wasn't really able to do a lot of video gaming, so I kind of followed it, but I didn't back for a while until, and then there was a little bit of are they actually going to kind of do it? And so I waited a little bit to actually financially get involved and get into the game. And so I think about not so much what CIG promised at the very beginning, but I like to think about when I got into the verse for the first time and how different it is from any other game I've ever played. Just the amazement, the wonder, I can go anywhere, do anything. I oscillate between the game is going to be radically different from what they said and what I experienced and made believe in my mind and what my expectations were. And wow, we're getting so close. And this is going to be right on point. And it bounces back and forth for me.
It's a natural
I think
cycle.
we're on the right track. Yeah, but
I think we all experience that a little bit.
They've not abandoned. My biggest fear for Star Citizen is, and there's no evidence to believe that they're going to do this, but this is my biggest Star Citizen fear, is that CIG decides that they've had enough of the negative public pressure of, just finish it already, right? And just start cutting the corners. You know what? We said that you're going to fly through a jump point, but it's just going to be a loading screen now. Yeah, we promised you all this amazing, salvage gameplay, but actually you just grab it with the claw, suck it into the reclaimer, and then it does it all for you. I'm always afraid that CIG is just going to give up and sprint to completion and do it. And that's my biggest fear. And like I said, there's no evidence that that's what they're doing. But
That's what a lot of people want.
right, but there's a lot of demand for that. But the way things are going now, development's been slow. There's stuff that hasn't been flashy. 318 is really, the reigniting of that for me, in the sense of, no, the game for me is, especially with 318 coming out, really becoming the game I thought it would be. So
Agreed. Red Monster, how about you?
I feel like my expectations of the game have always been that they're going to develop something that is entirely unique. And looking at, I've put my time into Elite Dangerous and done their mining gameplay, and it's been a few years since I've done that, but it's such a unique and different experience in Star Citizen, that the level of detail and the immersion you're going after, I describe games like Elite Dangerous and No Man's Sky as being a mile wide but an inch deep, right? There's not a lot of depth out there. Once you've done it there, it's it doesn't take a huge learning curve to get up the skill gap, and some of it's all the engineering gameplay in Elite Dangerous is just completely random numbered battles, that I feel like Star Citizen really brings a skill level into it that's required. And yeah, from my my initial pledge was also in like 2015, and I've taken my break from the game in between there and come back for the last 2 years, but I feel like my expectations have always kind of been fluid. I've just expected them to make deliver a fantastic game that's unique in its own right. And I think looking back at the time when I first pledged, I was coming off of Diablo 3, that that's a franchise I grew up on, right?
Mhm.
And I feel like their release of that game and some of the issues they had with the if anybody remembers, like the real money auction house on it, like those types of experiences killed that franchise for me. And it's because they had shareholders to make happy. They had a timeline to deliver it on. And so they developed the shell of a game they could in that time and expected people to be okay with it. And that was a huge turnoff for me for some of those other big title games, where I saw Star Citizen delivering an experience that no one else could. And that's really why I've gotten hooked onto it. So it's, I would say, my expectation that they're going to deliver a fantastic and unique and immersive experience. They've proved time and time again that that's what they're doing right now. I didn't become, I didn't pledge initially to be an industrial focused player. I just liked space games, and what I saw with their mining gameplay, that really turned the corner for me. And I said, you know what? They have such a level of immersion, and it's a skill, and there's a learning curve there, and it's something you feel rewarded when you do it properly. So that's where I come in, and I see them delivering more and more of that. Our first look at mining was in 3.2, and they've iterated from that on. 318 brings us salvage, and I'm sure the speed of iteration there on salvage is going to be significantly faster, and whatever is next in that pipeline.
I
So
hope
I'm
it is.
excited for it.
I hope they continue working on it. XeroState, how about you?
So it's important to have a wide perspective, but if you narrow your perspective, you start to see some cracks, which is okay. I mean, there's no game that doesn't have some cracks if you narrow your perspective enough. A good example is that I think Chris Roberts at one point said something about he doesn't want it to become beam citizen, right? Everything's a laser beam. The problem is it's kind of becoming that, but most people are okay with that, I think. Salvage is just a beam. Tractor beaming is just a beam. Mining is just a beam at the moment. There's not a whole lot else to it. Now, there's some differences with that, but there's a lot of beam gameplay, right? And that was something that he wanted to stay away from, but they haven't stayed away from it all that much. And I'm okay with that. I think a lot of people are okay with that. But if you widen your perspective more, it's like you said, Red Monster, where you start to see it as this immersive experience that you can't have anywhere else. I would say twice a week when I'm playing, I say you can't do this anywhere but Star Citizen. Whatever just happened, there's a bounty on a Carrack, and you jump onto the Carrack, and then it starts flying away, blows up your ship, but you break in and kill the guy, steal his Carrack, and then take it back to Grim Hex. And at the end of it, you're just like, you couldn't do that in any other game ever. There's no other experience that allows you to do what just happened. And that happens at Star Citizen all the time. And I expect that's going to keep happening. But you start to look at some of the little things and you're like, okay, there's some flaws here and there. But yeah, it's hard to see the project as anything but special. But have my experiences or my expectations changed?
Mhm.
My expectations back in 2013. The problem was I was playing PlanetSide 2 back in 2013. I was playing WoW, like, I don't know, Wrath of the Lich King or whatever was out back then in 2013, you know, and the first Wrath of the Lich King, not the new one. And it was just a whole different landscape in video gaming. So your expectations were based on the video games you saw at the time. And the video games we see now are just No Man's Sky was a twinkle in the eye of somebody, you know, back in 2013 or 2012, I guess. And even Elite Dangerous was new, fresh in, what did that come out? 2014 was it? I can't remember.
Same
I think
time,
it was
2015,
yeah.
2014.
And that's how it's like Elite Dangerous has lived almost its entire life cycle in the span of Star Citizen's current development, you know, and that's kind of special that Star Citizen's still around, and other games that have kind of called themselves MMOs have lived an entire life cycle within that time.
Mhm.
But it's also a little bit depressing in a way, because you're like, I want the game to come out so it can live its life cycle, which hopefully is 20, 30 years, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So have my expectations changed? Yes, but mostly because the industry and the landscape has changed so much that if your expectations didn't change at all, you'd be living in the past, you know? Your expectations have to change a little bit because of the landscape.
Yeah. Games changed a lot over the time, and I'm guessing it will continue to change. I would say there are a couple things that pop in that I'm like, I don't know about that. One that always pops out to me,
I need a cat on my ship, though. I need pets.
Right.
That
See,
needs to
now
happen.
that's
That's
something that
great
they
idea.
haven't added that I'm very
That was a
happy with.
backer
We
reward.
had turtles.
A backer reward in was it for some million, 27, 37? I don't know what million it
Definitely
was.
should be in by now.
Was one of the rewards.
Where's my cat, Chris?
That's pretty big pillar tech.
Yeah.
But really,
Back to turtles.
I'm more of a dog person, so just
yeah, I get
throwing
that.
it out there.
Well, whatever. Robot dogs. You know.
I think the perspective thing is a really good point, though. I think when you look at this, I think we're all really guilty of it. I think the community is as well, of like a narrow lens,
Oh, we need
kind of scrutinizing it. But when you when you stand it side by side on another game that costs $45, you know, there's so much here. This game has been around for a long time and has changed and has developed and added so much. This is not the same game. The 3.18 patch is not the same game the 3.17 patch was. And I think anyone who's paid $45 to say that you're not getting that back in some way
And
is well, it just hasn't given the game a fair shake.
And Zero, I think Zero actually tweeted that games used to have like a 200-hour guarantee.
That was some super old game that I found.
Right?
I played this game called Mordor 1.1. It was like just super dungeon crawler, 2D scroller, you know. And it had in the manual, it was like, if you don't play this game for 200 hours, fill this form out, send me your data files, and I'll give you a refund.
Yeah.
It's just
Dang,
crazy
wow.
to think.
You think about how many games are offering that level of gameplay right now, you know.
Yeah, none.
Well, and that's why I brought up, you know, before what I was saying, when I set my expectations, I don't set them to the 2013 vision of what Star Citizen was going to be then. I base it more on where we are now and where the game is going. You know, to look at like DCS, for example, which is the other big thing that I create content for, and dogfighting in Star Citizen doesn't hold a candle to something like that, a dedicated flight simulator. But going back to even the idea of like beam play, right? Like you didn't want to have beam play 10 years ago because it was just this, it felt like this cheap shortcut to something. The beam play we have now isn't, I don't notice, like, even though I'm always acutely aware of Chris's point about not wanting to have beam play, right? But when I'm doing mining or I'm now doing salvaging or doing certain medical things, like it doesn't like scream to me like, oh yeah, beams, this is just so dull. It's
I'm not going to be able to not notice
works. You know, it's the
Sorry.
sci-fi way.
Just beams for everything. God damn it.
Here's the thing, though. I like it. It's easier for a player to understand, but it's still unique enough that you can get things done with it. And when you're playing a video game, you want to get things done. So it's not that I have anything against the beam gameplay.
Right.
It was just a noticing of like, this is kind of what was said and here's what kind of happened,
Yeah, I think they've done a good job with using the beams as a latching on point for each type of gameplay.
Oh,
and you
for
can
sure.
then
Yeah.
grow into it after that. But guys, that about wraps it up. I kept you here for so much longer than I told you I would, but thank you all for your patience, for answering questions, for talking, for giving your thoughts. Please, if there's anything else that you want to say about next year, about 318, about just your feelings on the project, feel free to do so right now, and then we'll go around just one more time. You guys can let everybody know where you come from.
Sweet.
Anybody who
Yeah,
wants
yeah,
to mention it. If you don't have anything else you want to say, then we could just do our little outro. In which case, Leadnap, go ahead and let everybody know where you do content.
Well, yeah. So you can find me on YouTube at Leadnap Gaming. Just search that, or leadnap.com. Website's a little rough, needs a rework again. Got a full-time job though, so but like I said before, 318, and for those that haven't gone into the PTU yet, I would say what a remarkable year we have in front of us. It definitely reignites for me the love of Star Citizen, and I am just really looking forward to kind of where this year is going to go. Just how much better the game is about to be. So, and then I also just want to say that, I'm bummed. I know my wife is probably ready to murder me with how long this has gone, but
give us
I could
sorry.
go all night. This is just such a great, we're having such a great conversation. And so just, thanks for the opportunity, Space Tomato, for the opportunity to come on and, hang out with you guys, and really enjoyed this conversation. So
You got to say, honey, I'm making new friends. Don't you want me to have friends?
I'm being social.
That's what you do. That'll solve
It's
it.
been there before.
Oh, yeah.
Mastered it.
Wife aggro, never good. Well, never had a wife, but you guys get the idea.
yeah.
Ollie, how about you give the people one more reminder where they can find your stuff?
So I make YouTube videos under Olli43, Star Citizen content. Currently checking out 318, which is a great patch, and I'm looking forward to everyone getting their hands on it. Just a lot of wow, look at cool the beams are on the channel. That's what we do.
Cool beams. Red Monster.
Yeah, so RedMonsterSC, you can find me here on Twitch Monday nights, Friday nights, and then every Sunday morning we do a mining session. So feel free to join in on that. I also make YouTube tutorials. Have gone way deep into mining for the previous patches, and then getting into salvage on the new gameplay release as we get updates to it. So find me here. I'm also I've got a full-time job besides this, so kind of hit and miss. But my org is the Red Legion, and you'll probably see us around doing a lot of industrial stuff. So
cool. And XeroState?
Well, I'm XeroState. I'm on Twitch mostly, YouTube sometimes, and I'm an idiot on Twitter. I try to do gameplay a lot, try to do community stuff. We do a lot of FPS Fridays. People don't do Star Marine very often, but when you get a big group doing it, it's kind of fun. Other than that, you can just find me on Twitch most of the time. A lot of weekdays. I have a full-time job too in IT, and then I stream on top of that. So it's like 6 p.m. Central a lot of times.
I don't know how you guys do
it. We lose brain cells every day. That's what we do.
You guys are awesome.
And I want to point out that there is a picture of a vulture using its tractor beams in the letter for the chairman. I'm staring at it right now.
Yeah, I saw that. It was interesting.
Is that a tractor beam?
I think it's a tractor beam.
Yeah,
or it's hole munching. I don't know.
The green.
Yeah, green is usually tractor beam, right? Greenish blue. Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, pretty cool to see.
Cool.
Little hints. Well, thanks, guys. One final time. I'm going to try that Star Marine out, XeroState. I want to get into more of FPS in this game.
Yeah, if you get like 6 to 8 people to press go at the same time, everybody probably gets into the same Star Marine instance, and then you can all shoot each other.
Cool. Oh, I'll have to try that out. Thanks again, guys, for joining me today. I really appreciate it. These are the best talks, getting people together. We all make different types of content. We all follow the game a lot, but hearing different sort of perspectives at the same time is really nice. So thank you guys for joining me today. Thanks everybody who...
Appreciate the invite.
Yeah, of course. Thanks everybody who came to watch this live on Twitch. If you're listening to this after the fact, consider checking that out. We do it at the end of every month, usually the last stream of the month, and then this goes onto my main YouTube channel and audio podcast platforms the first days of the following month. But this is the both simultaneously final episode of 2022 and the first of 2023. So from all of us to you, welcome to the new year. We're hoping it's better than 2022, and we're looking forward to a lot of good things with Star Citizen. Yeah, we did it somehow. We got through. But anyways, everybody, thank you again, and we'll see you next month. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers.